Tell me, piece yourself back together now. What's your vision?
Story got a big jolt of attention recently when a Brazilian politician named Telmario Mota pointed out in a statement that according to one of the people he represents, Nibiru could be causing a massive cataclysm upon our planet Earth as soon as October of 2017. He asked for further investigation into Planet X, while claiming NASA is well aware of an impending cataclysm. In October of 2016, Space.com reported that according to astronomer Mike Brown, the so-called Planet 9, which we refer to as Nibiru, would be found within 16 months, which would put the planet on track to be discovered no later than the end of this coming winter. What is so interesting about the mention of Planet 9 is that astronomers have claimed that its existence would help to explain almost everything we don't understand about our solar system. The mysteries of our solar system solved by the existence of such a monster, such as the tilt of the sun. Coincidentally, the nickname given for Planet 9 is the Perturber. Astronomy magazine posed the question of whether Planet 9 was responsible for the tilt of the sun. They posed the question of why Planet 9 has such a powerful effect on the sun and the solar system. It is true that we do not know everything there is to know about our solar system. We know there are gatekeepers who are keeping pertinent information from the general public. There are far too many ancient and modern mysteries, such as Stonehenge, ancient petroglyphs, crop circles, and the pyramids, that prove we still know very little in 2017, despite the technologies of today. There are potentially hazardous asteroids that are capable of wiping out entire countries. Experts warned that they might not be able to detect massive space rocks that could be hidden until it is too late. Earth's orbit passes through the region of hazardous space rocks every few years, and experts believe that we are drawing closer to it, thus posing a great risk for an asteroid strike at any given moment. These space rocks would dwarf the meteor that blasted over Russia in 2013. Such collisions with the Earth go beyond catastrophic, with some NASA scientists even believing that a planet that was once situated between Mars and Jupiter was obliterated by a collision with a huge space rock, thus creating the asteroid belt. If the theory of a Planet 9 in our solar system is quickly becoming more evident, then all of the other theories that exist today will not matter. Whether or not Planet 9 would bring with it a pole shift for Earth is way out of our current knowledge and control, but it is always best to prepare for any situation that will arise. The theory behind pole shifts is that the axis of rotation of the Earth will change from its present location. In other words, the North and South poles could shift from where they are now. This polar shift would negatively affect all life on Earth through massive climate change. This can of course happen, and it wouldn't be the first time. Here are a few possibilities on how a polar shift could occur. An asteroid or comet hitting the Earth at the right angle, so that the lithosphere or outer crust shifts underneath. On Earth, the lithosphere includes the crust and the uppermost mantle. Beneath is a weaker, hotter layer that moves independent of the mantle. An asteroid or comet collision with Earth causes the entire planet to shift its axis of rotation. An unusually magnet celestial object passing close enough to the Earth to temporarily reorient the magnetic field, which then drags the lithosphere about a new axis of rotation, as in the case of a Planet X object. The Earth's magnetic field could eventually get to zero through a reduced or lack of rotation of the Earth. This fossil forest on Healberg Island, which is now barren, dates back to the Eocene period. The trees actually did not fossilize, but instead were mummified. This indicates a much faster process where they were quickly dehydrated in an area that was once a high-latitude wetland forest, pointing to a likely polar shift. The most probable scenario, according to science, for a major change in the poles is a geomagnetic reversal. This means the Earth's magnetic field reverses or interchanges, switching the north and south magnet poles. This type of reversal has happened many times, with the most recent one thought to be about 3,500 years ago. In addition to the theory of a physical shift for the Earth, it is also possible that a spiritual shift is taking place. The Maya spoke of this spiritual shift in their teachings and interpretations, a shift to a higher level of consciousness for the world. So the rotation of the Earth could be affected by a pull from the galactic center, a center that we are moving much closer to than we have been in the last 26,000 years. So what do the Maya foresee for the remainder of 2017? Our cosmic journey will take us to the other side of the Milky Way, which could affect our sun and planet magnetically. The magnetic pull from the galactic center could slow our rotation to zero before it starts up again, possibly in the opposite direction. This would put us in sync with the natural rotation of the Milky Way on the other side. In order for the great age of spirituality to happen, there would have to be a series of rapid changes taking place in the field of technology, within our environment, and on a social scale, all of which are taking place today. It is quite interesting that the Maya apparently knew about our passage to the other side of the Milky Way, and also the timing of the great age of change. Right now, we are witnessing a cleansing or a purging of the present values, which consist of material possessions, power, and control, all of which will have no place in the next great age. What futurists and mystics may tell you is that our planet is heading towards an impending pole shift, an actual physical shift in the position of the Earth's north celestial pole, one that would have disastrous consequences around the globe. But if this were to occur, as some have implied in 2017, then how do we prepare? We cannot control the events that happen on a daily basis, but we can control how we react to these events. We can look on these events with negativity, or we can attempt to embrace the positive values that will accompany the new age that is awaiting us. The age of transformation, where the power of forgiveness will lead to unity and integrity, and which will promote inner peace in each of us. So if nothing catastrophic were to occur in the remainder of 2017, by embracing this new set of values, we would at the very least reduce the negativity, making our lives seem a bit more meaningful and worthwhile. You see, the world and its inhabitants are tired of the present values. They have lost their meaning. They serve no purpose, and people are ready for change. The world has known this for a very long time. There is more to life than getting up, going to work, having a mortgage, paying taxes, or having the latest technological gadget. If decadence is the way of the world, it is because we have made it so. It has become a function of the present era that all of us are presently a part of. On May 15th of this year, 2017, our observation team posted a video from Slovakia. dated May 13th, showing the presence of two suns. I posted my analysis of this particular video, which I considered to be authentic. As you can see here, the object to the 4 o'clock position of the sun is seen moving behind the clouds. Now, anyone who knows anything about lens flare anomalies or refractions originating from the reflection of a camera lens are well aware that a lens flare cannot appear behind an edifice. Now, whether that be clouds or tree branches or any other type of obstruction. The object seen in this video, which we refer to as a second sun, does not fluctuate, which means it does not move about in relation to the position of the sun. It is primarily in a stationary position at the time in which the object was captured. So this gives considerable credence to the authenticity of this video. The evidence continues to show the presence of a celestial body or a system of planets that are creating havoc across our solar system. Now, the reason that I am bringing up this particular video evidence from last month is that it has garnered much attention across social media, including one of the more notable Planet X researchers and investigators, whom many of you may be familiar with, Marshall Masters. Now, Marshall has written several books on surviving the Planet X tribulation. He has been a frequent guest of the nationally syndicated radio program Coast to Coast, and he is the former Science Features news producer at CNN. Mr. Masters has written and presented a detailed frame-by-frame analysis of the Facebook video, which he has made available on his website, Your Own World USA. And you can find the link to this article in the description section of our video presentation. He divided his analysis into 3 categories: the field of view, gamma testing, and smartphone exposure analysis. All 3 are equally important. However, in order to get a general indication of where this object of interest may be seen at this time, let's concentrate on the first one, the field of view. As you can see in this screen capture of our Facebook posting, I indicated that the object, which we refer to as the second sun, is gradually moving to a position that puts it slightly above the ecliptic plane of our solar system, where all of the planets are situated as they move in their counterclockwise orbits around our sun. It also appears that the object of interest is beginning its closest approach to the sun, which we call perihelion. As Marshall has indicated in his analysis, the official time of this capture for this location was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, time of sunset on the date of capture, May 12th, was at approximately 8:20 in the evening. This would make the timing of this video capture rather unusual, in that most observations up until this time have been either at sunset or during sunrise. So as you can see here, that places the position of this object of interest above the horizon and at the point of the ecliptic. If we take into consideration that the Earth's axis is tilted at 23.5 degrees from the plane of its orbit. The object of interest is labeled in this frame so that you can see its relative position to the planets on the ecliptic plane. According to the observational sky charts, both Venus and Mercury are well below the sun and not in our field of view. So although the point of view of the observer relative to the sun would place the object of interest at the 4 o'clock position, the actual location would be relative to the ecliptic. It therefore places the object slightly above the ecliptic at the 2 o'clock position relative to the sun. This is quite frankly disturbing from one very interesting reason. For some time now, most observations of the incoming object or system of objects, depending on what we are observing at any particular time, would place their position somewhere behind the sun, as its presence was primarily observable during either sunrise or during sunset. Since this video observations were this particular video were made several hours before sunset on May 12th, an astute observer of this phenomena would have to consider the probability that this object of interest is nearing the point of perihelion, its closest approach to the sun. If the analysis is correct, then the celestial body, which is just one of several that are accompanying this binary system, will eventually move into a position that will place it squarely between us and the sun, thus leading to the 3 days of darkness that so many have spoke of both in Scripture and in prophecy. There is one more very important aspect of the analysis that Mr. Masters conducted. In his gamma testing, he experienced in accurate detail the difference between a real entity and a lens flare refraction. As you can see here, there are two distinctly bright sources of light present in the video frame, the second sun appearing behind the cloud, whereas the faint green object is appearing in front of the tree branches, this being a lens flare. In the next frame, the gamma is reduced by 50%. The hot objects are persistent, but the green object is beginning to fade. By the time the gamma is reduced by 75%, the green object is gone. Finally, when the gamma is reduced by 90%, all that remains is the two objects in the sky. Everything else has turned to dark. Marshall Masters' video frame analysis clearly indicates that the object of interest is a celestial body in space. It is not an anomaly or an aberration. Most importantly, his analysis confirms what we have been saying all along. There is something perturbing the natural rhythm of our solar system, and this has been happening for quite some time now. We have been seeing the effects of this perturber here on Earth in the way of extreme climate change and in the way of significant Earth changes, all of which are contributing to an extended tilt of the Earth's axis towards the magnetic influence of this great perturber. I would like to thank Marshall Masters for his recognition of our work on this subject and his contributions in our effort to inform the general public. You can learn more about the Slovakia video by going to our Facebook page and following the link located here. We are committed to keeping our comments open and available to our viewers, but we ask that you refrain from objectionable discourse. In the meantime, stay safe, remain focused on your surroundings, and keep looking to the sky.
I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. And the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand?
Now, we're going to start today by talking about the days of Noah. Jesus, talking to his disciples, and it's recorded in Matthew 24, said, But as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. In other words, as it was, and which then prompts us to go back and look at the days of Noah and find out how they really were. So let's talk about that for a little bit. We have the creation of man. We have the antediluvian civilization. And I think more and more is being learned about that time period. And you've done considerable research yourself. So let's talk about what interests you about the days of Noah.
Well, Matthew refers to the days of Noah in a generic sense. I believe there's quite a number of aspects to the days of Noah. What interested me initially was the scientific approach. What caused the flood? What does the Bible say happened to the earth before and after the flood? That gives us clues as to what happened. Is there evidence today that supports the theory as to what caused the flood? And is there any prophecies as to whether that event will reoccur in the future? Because if the phrase, as in the days of Noah, is true, very much all aspects of that time will be replicated in the future. And what I'm referring to specifically is we have come to the conclusion that part of one of these events is a pole shift that happened at that time, which was an instrumental part of the flood, which we feel the Bible supports it, and it also talks about an upcoming pole shift in the near future.
In other words, a pole shift then, which resulted in a flood. There will be another pole shift in the future, as described in Revelation.
Right.
But it will have a different effect than the one in the days of Noah. In fact, the Lord told Noah that he would never again destroy the world by flood, or by, I guess, totally covering it in water. But on the other hand, we read a lot of prophecy in Isaiah and other places that suggest a pole shift. I've got my Bible open here to Isaiah 24:20. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard. Well, that's a graphic description of something wobbling. And for something the size of the earth to wobble, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Tell us, what you see when you look at Scripture, both in Genesis and in Revelation.
Right, absolutely. The first thing is what you described. The type of pole shift we're talking about is not a magnetic pole shift, which scientists are saying the Earth flips on its north and south pole magnetic axis frequently. In fact, we have a wandering north magnetic pole. It's somewhere in the Hudson Bay right now. We're not talking about that type of pole shift. We're talking about a geographic pole shift, one that is incredibly dangerous to the earth. It actually shifts the entire planet, as you mentioned, Isaiah talking about the planet wobbling. So let's look at the days of Noah before the flood. We find that before the flood, there's a description in Genesis 2:6 that the whole earth was watered by a mist and that there was no rain. We know because of our axis shift today at 23.5 degrees, we have weather patterns, cyclones, tornadoes, we have rain all over the planet at any given time, lightning storms. They had none of this before the days of Noah. No rain. And it says specifically no rain fell on the earth, which means the whole earth was truly watered by a mist. The only way that could happen is if the axis of the earth was parallel to the axis of the sun. So as it spun on its axis in its rotation around the sun, it became a temperate climate from North Pole to South Pole. The entire planet was basically a paradise, a garden. There was no polar caps at that time. We also see another clue as to the pole shift is that when the flood came, Genesis tells us that the fountains of the deep were broken up. There is, of course, references to the firmament in the sky, so there is possibly moisture in the air or a canopy. There is a canopy theory, but we believe that the scriptures, even though that may have fallen, if there was a canopy, the majority of the water came from the oceans. Now, if you have a pole shift and physically, geographically shift the poles of the earth, grab the earth, shift it, it would not only wobble but then stabilize at its current axis orientation of 23.5 degrees, but in the process, the centripetal force would slosh the water from the oceans around the planet. That there's more than enough water to cover every mountain on the planet. Now we look at Genesis and we see the effects of the planet after Noah. Mm-hmm. And we are clearly being told there is a rainbow in the sky, a rainbow that has never been seen before because there's a lot of moisture in the air. This was God's covenant to Noah that he would never destroy the earth again by a flood. Could he? Yes. The oceans are still there. He could, but he promises he won't. In fact, later on in the scriptures, we learn that he says that the next time he comes, he will destroy the world by fire. During the days of Noah, it was very clear what type of pole shift we are talking about, a geographic pole shift, where the entire planet actually moves 23.5 degrees. Or the whole planet moves, in this particular case, it was 23.5 degrees. Now, there is a much, much, much more devastating type of pole shift that has never happened on the planet. It is a crustal pole shift. It is one where the axis of the Earth continues to spin the way it has been, but the entire outside crust of the planet suddenly shifts around the spinning axis. Mm-hmm. Now, remember when I said that the equator, wherever the equator is around the spinning axis, is about 20 kilometers wider? Well, as the crust shifts over this, the land literally has to rip apart in excess of 20 kilometers as it moves across the new equator and collapse back over. So it literally is going to rip apart most of the planet while this is happening. Let me read to you why I believe that the upcoming event is a crustal pole shift. Let me read to you out of Revelation 6:14 the actual description of this event. This is the opening of the sixth seal. And the heavens departed as a scroll when it was rolled together, and every mountain and every island were moved out of their place. What it's talking about is, think of just a quick analogy. Islands and mountains as carrots. They're on the surface, but their base goes far underground. And if you chop off every island and every mountain, if you take this verse literally, everyone on the planet, and everyone is moved simultaneously out of its place, you have a crustal pole shift. The more liquid center of the earth, the mantle, is stationary, and the crust is being ripped away from the center mantle. This type of pole shift would create lateral forces all over the planet, collapsing buildings, collapsing infrastructures, causing tsunamis, generating an EMP pulse from the center of the earth, basically disrupting all of our communication satellites. GPS would be down, all of our power grids would disappear. There would be massive high winds and an exponential increase in earthquakes all around the planet.
And islands being moved out of their places, that's not as easy as it sounds, because if, for example, the Hawaiian Islands are above the sea, but they widen out under the water, and they're on a very firm base. Let's put it this way, they have a firm foundation. But the Bible says islands like that are going to be ripped away, literally removed from their connection.
In fact, the Old Testament refers to this as well. Like you mentioned, Isaiah 13:13 says that the earth will be moved out of her place, meaning it won't even be in the same orbit. Whatever causes this pole shift, this crustal mantle pole shift, is also going to alter the orbit of the earth. Isaiah 24, the earth will reel to and fro as a drunkard. It won't even have cycles anymore. If you were alive at that moment and you looked up in the sky, the sun is moving in this direction for a few hours, it slowly diverts and moves into a different direction. So this would be a horrible time. As far as anybody's concerned, it's the end of the world.
In 1958, Charles Hapgood suggested in his book, The Earth's Shifting Crust, that the Earth's crust had undergone repeated displacements and that the geological concepts of continental drift and seafloor spreading owed their secondary livelihoods to the primary nature of crustal shift. According to Hapgood, crustal shift was made possible by a layer of liquid rock situated about 100 miles beneath the surface of the planet. A pole shift would thus displace the Earth's crust, in around the inner mantle, resulting in crustal rocks being exposed to magnetic fields of a different direction. An earth crust displacement, as the words suggest, is a movement of the entire outer shell of the earth over its inner layers. If you remove the peel from an orange and then reattach it to the fruit, you can visualize the possibility of the peel moving over the inner layers. The Earth's crust, according to Charles Hapgood, can likewise change its position over the inner layers. When it does, the globe experiences climatic change. The climatic zones, polar, temperate, and tropical, remain the same because the sun still shines on the Earth from the same angle in the sky. From the perspective of people on Earth at the time, it appears as the sky is falling. In reality, it is the Earth's crust shifting to another location. Some land moves toward the tropics, others shifts with the same movement toward the poles, yet others may escape such great changes in latitude. The consequence of such a movement of the entire outer shell of the Earth is catastrophic. Throughout the world, massive earthquakes shake the land and enormous tidal waves crash into and over the continental shelf. As the old ice caps leave the polar zones, they melt, raising the ocean level higher and higher.
After publishing more than 70 videos on this subject, I thought that maybe it would be appropriate to provide my reasons why Nibiru, Planet X, is real, and how NASA has become an unwilling accomplice in verifying its existence. I'll start with the first one that comes to mind, and probably the most compelling argument for the existence of Planet X. You have heard me talk about this before, but for the sake of those who may be novice or inexperienced regarding this subject, let's be mindful of what has already been proven to be true. NASA announced to the world in 1983 that Planet X was on the fringes of our solar system. They said it was virtually knocking at our door. The story was covered on the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times, two of the most prestigious newspapers in the world. Soon afterwards, then-President Ronald Reagan made the declaration part of the United States national security mandate, which in political terms means he made it illegal for astronomers, scientists, government agencies, and institutions of learning from speaking publicly about this discovery. He forced this mandate because he was convinced that the public would panic if they understood that a large planetary body was entering our solar system that had the potential to cause global cataclysms on an epic scale. He convinced other nations to follow suit, and it then became top secret information, where only bits and pieces were allowed to leak out to the public. There are many stories from ancient civilizations the world over that describe a large planetary body that returns to our solar system periodically, causing destruction in the form of superfloods, earthquakes, and volcanic activity. If you take the writings of the Sumerian world, considered the cradle of civilization, and compared them to the stories spoken by the Aborigines of Australia and the teachings of Holy Scripture with respect to wormwood, you will discover that each of these stories has a similarity that cannot be considered a coincidence. And here's why. The Sumerians were the people of Babylonia who actually named this planet Nibiru, or Planet of the Crossing, and did this in their own language. One of the reasons why this is so convincing is that the Sumerians actually discovered Pluto and included it in their model of our solar system, which is in direct contradiction to the fact that our own astronomers didn't announce the discovery of Pluto until 1930. If you have done any research, you may know why public and private astronomers alike are searching the sky for the elusive planet. In 1894, Percival Lowell, a wealthy American businessman, financed the building of the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. Part of the Lowell Observatory's original mandate was to specifically look for the mysterious planet, thus establishing profound proof that America knew of its existence over 100 years ago. They searched the skies for over 30 years and thought they had found it in 1930, but it turned out to be what we call Pluto, and determined it wasn't large enough to be Planet X. This compelling piece of evidence is not widely known or talked about, but shows that certain groups within American society knew of this planet's existence and its potential for devastation. Although rarely talked about, the phenomenon of an increase in the Earth's wobble observed by the public worldwide is included in the top 5 reasons for its numbers of observations made by the public. Here's an important observation that has been reported by farmers around the world, who are consistently viewing the sky as part of their livelihood as the world's food producers. Since the year 2005, they have been noticing how the sun and the moon have been rising and setting in abnormal positions. Now, there can be no mistake about this, since their observations have been corroborated by the Inuit elders, the Eskimo civilization of the Arctic frontier. So here's what we know about the movement of Nibiru Planet X. It is an unnatural orbit. It does not reside on the galactic plane where all other normal planets reside. It enters our solar system from the galactic south. That is exactly why this system can be seen more easily from the southern hemisphere. And this is why large astronomical observatories have been built in this part of the world. There is sufficient evidence of an abnormal Earth wobble. They include unusual changes in the jet stream resulting in extreme weather-related events, an increase in tectonic stress, an increase in volcanic eruptions, and the melting of the polar ice caps, which have been thoroughly documented by leading scientists and geologists. Irrefutable photos and videos of second sun sightings the world over is another evidential link that cannot be ignored. Some will say every one of these images are indicative of lens flares, unless they can be proven without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, of course, we live in a digital age of computer graphics and technology. Some can be easily faked or misidentified as lens flares or sundogs, dust smudges, or some natural phenomenon. But many are not, and those that are not fake are usually the ones that are subsequently removed. Why would you censor them if they were in fact fakes? The censorship of Planet X information is very compelling. But if something is real and is then deleted, it can no longer be used as evidence because it will be inaccessible to the public. In the past, I have had to delete a number of profound links and videos from articles published on my media news sites because they have been removed from the internet for reasons that cannot be explained. One of the most compelling reasons for the existence of Planet X has to do with the so-called secret preparations that the world's governments have been conducting since the mid to late 1970s. I talked in length about this in my previous video, which coincidentally sparked a considerable amount of interest across social media and in the channel comments section of the video description. The preparations that are ongoing include, but are not necessarily limited to, underground sanctuaries and military installations. Stockpiling of supplies, which include food, water, seeds, weapons, ammunition, gasoline, and other pertinent necessities for survival. FEMA has constructed ready-made camps in various locations in the United States, away from coastlines. The camps are sitting there empty, but why exactly were they built? For what purpose? In China, they have constructed ghost cities within their vast interior, well away from coastal areas, populated by rural residents at the insistence of the Chinese military. The construction of camps can be interpreted as meaning one thing. They are anticipating the destruction or the elimination of large populations of their own citizens. one can determine that its purpose is to keep the impending cataclysms a secret for as long as possible. Unexplainable phenomena should be enough to convince even the most die-hard naysayer that our planet is changing exponentially. Since the beginning of the millennium, leading up to the present time, there has been a considerable increase in all of the events shown here. All of these events have one common denominator: the increase in the Earth's wobble, which can only be caused by another large magnetic influence in our solar system. But remember this one important reality. These events can be easily explained away and censored by the mainstream media and the powerful elite. The concerns of the public can be quickly quelled just by saying that these are natural events or events caused by human negligence. This then allows those in power to keep the public second-guessing, keeping them from connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture. This is where you, as a sky watcher, should use common sense and draw your own conclusions that not all of these events can be just a coincidence. Is the misrepresentation or the underreporting of large earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on a global scale. In 2003, the United States Geological Society lowered the earthquake rating system by 1 point, thus allowing them to convince the public that large earthquakes were not on the rise. This shows the USGS duplicity in the matter, and people may have noticed that almost every major earthquake in the last 10 years is immediately downgraded by this institution. This certainly shows a pattern of deceit if you follow this with any sense of concern. Volcanic eruptions are more difficult to determine, but here is something quite striking. It is estimated that there are more than 3 million fissures, volcanoes, and magma flows that litter the ocean floors worldwide, with around 3,000 on the surface. One major volcanic eruption can pour more carbon dioxide and other poisonous gas and pollution into our atmosphere in one day than all of the man-made pollution we have released into the atmosphere in the last 100 years. Consider how this would affect the environment when multiple volcanoes are erupting worldwide at the same time, and you have a recipe for disaster that could well lead to a mass extinction level event. Here is something very interesting. Many believe the comet Elenin was so named as a warning to global elitists that Nibiru had arrived in our solar system. It's believed to be an acronym for Extinction Level Event. Nibiru is near. This reason I have saved for last: the overwhelming so-called scientific evidence that polar shifts have happened in the Earth's past. From a geological standpoint, the evidence is certainly overwhelming and has been confirmed many times over, even though it has not been widely recognized in the public perspective, even though dozens of research papers and studies show this to be true. What is suspect in their findings is the reason given for these past shifts, which has nothing to do with a rogue planet or a system of planets. Here is something I want you to know when you consider each of these findings by leading scientists. Many of them are paid and supported by government grants to publish conclusions on what the government wants you to know. Therefore, the evidence is shaped to fit the theory or the idea. The same could be said of astronomers. Many of them either work for NASA or for agencies tied to government research institutions. Because of this, they can be held to the national security mandate that was implemented by President Reagan in the early 1980s. So think about that the next time you ask why so many astronomers haven't said anything about Planet X. If your livelihood is linked to an agency that wants information kept from the public, you will lie, you will falsify documents, and you will create new theories to back their agenda. I could list more reasons for the existence of Planet X, as it is all too real for me, but I want you to do some of your own research. Search the internet. Read up on book publications dating back 100 years. Or if you prefer not to read, check out the many videos and movies and documentaries on this subject. It is our best means for seeking the truth. If Planet X is an elaborate hoax designed to spread fear throughout the world, then it has to be considered as the greatest of all. I've been accused of being a fearmonger just because of what I believe in and because of my sincere desire to warn others. And that is okay. I can handle that. You see, it has to do with a more noble cause. It is a part of our spiritual orientation and development. This is the moment in our existence in which we determine whether we live to serve others or to serve ourselves. It is a matter of choice. Some of you have already seen what is coming, either through your visions and dreams of its reality, or through your diligent observations of the sky. Through your own intuition coupled with spiritual guidance, you have come to know and understand these things. Not all of us are blessed to see its existence in its physical state. And yet, because of humanity's propensity not to believe anything that they cannot see with their own eyes, then many will have a difficult time in believing what the rest of us know to be true. Even so, we shouldn't stop recognizing how all of this is affecting the earth. Many are under the false assumption that something this big or this important just couldn't be kept from the public, and that out of the goodness of their hearts, the governments would inform their citizens if this were true. But the reality is they cannot inform you, and they will never inform you. How can you possibly tell 7 billion people that something is coming that the world cannot control? The global elite will seek shelter in their underground cities, but even these places will crumble by the magnitude of what is upon us. Current research and data now suggest that we are living in a time of global flooding and devastating changes thrust upon the earth by powerful forces unknown to this generation. Understanding my reasons for the existence of a Planet X or a Nemesis system may in the long run help many of you to seek the truth as to why our planet is facing perilous times. I have come to the realization that my purpose in life, irrespective of my personal accomplishments, is and has been to be of service to others in the latter days. Here is something that I know to be true. The ancient cultures and civilizations left many clues as a warning to future generations. And this is how the powers that be knew when and where to look for that planet that we call Nibiru, the planet of the crossing. It is a matter of simply connecting the dots.